Okay, so p4ddy0d00rs is currently undefeated by virtue of having played no games so far. And troth20 is 1-3 so far in their division. So it looks like they've played 2/3 of the match. So they're probably looking to make up some ground here. Alright, they've arrived. Alright, let's take a look at this kingdom. Got a few of the new menagerie cards. So, for draw, we've got Catacombs. Catacombs is like a smithy, but you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck first, and then if you don't like those, you can just pitch them and then draw 3 new ones. Instead, you can draw with... Mastermind can actually kind of function as a draw. You play a card that's like normally a cantrip, like say, Walled Village or Cartographer. You spin 1 draw, drawing Mastermind, 1 draw, drawing Cartographer. You play it 3 times, you get 3 cards back. That's kind of net new 1 draw. Hunting Lodge can draw. That works with draw to X style decks. If you got some cards that give you value mid-turn, like you play your villas and your oases mid-turn to get some coins, then you can play Hunting Lodge to draw 5 new cards. Hunting Lodge doesn't work very well with treasures though, because there's no value in drawing 5 treasures than pitching and drawing 5 new treasures, because you can't put the treasures into play until the buy phase. Troth has already noted that there is no lack of action here. We got Walled Village as a village, Hunting Lodge as a village, Villa is a village, Mastermind is also a village, similar to the way that it's a draw card. You play an action card 3 times, you only spend 1 action doing it. There is no trashing. There's no way to trash cards, but there is something that can kind of function like quasi-trashing, which is Crypt. Crypt allows you to set aside any number of cards. You could put... Oh, that's a good point from Wandering Linder. Yeah, I haven't even talked about Villa yet. There's a lot of interesting Villa tricks that actually could make Treasures plus Hunting Lodge a real thing. I'll come to that in a second. Anyways, returning to the point of no trashing. That is a big limitation, but with Crypt, you can set aside treasures and get them out of the way. And so, Crypt's usually not the A strat for trashing. It's costs 5, and it only temporarily gets stuff out of your deck. The treasures will ultimately get back into your deck. But with other strong engine pieces here and no trashing, I would definitely be looking to set up a good Crypt turn or 2. And if I could get like all 7 coppers on my mat for a while, that would be wonderful. So I think you'd play with a Crypt here. Maybe even 2. And then plus buy, looks like the only plus buy is from Villa. Other stuff of significance. Secret Cave is going to be very relevant, not because of Cave itself, which is only like an okay card, but because it means that they're playing with a Magic Lamp. Magic Lamp is basically a copper. It starts in place of one of the 7 starting coppers whenever Secret Cave is around. But if you can line up 6 unique cards in a single turn, with Magic Lamp being the 6th or later, then you can pop it, which A, trashes the copper, which is good, and more importantly, B, you get 3 wishes. A wish is just basically like you turn the wish in, you can get any card costing up to 6, which is excellent for jumpstarting your deck. And so often when Secret Cave is around, and I think this is no exception, I think priority number 1 is going to be trying to set up that Secret Lamp, or not the Secret Lamp, the Magic Lamp activation by getting 6 unique cards into play. A few other things to mention. Guide is a nice card for reliability. You set it aside, it's a cantrip on its own, and then once it's set aside, you can call it to just ditch your starting hand and get a new starting hand if you ever get a dud. So it's nice for avoiding dud hands. And lastly, Desperation is an event. It's not really plus buy. It says plus buy, but you have to spend a buy to get it, so it's just buy neutral. But basically, you can take a curse to get a short-term 2 coins. I don't think that'll see much use here, because curses are super, super bad here with no trashing. And so I would not take a curse for 2 coins, but in some kingdoms that's pretty valuable. So let's see what they're opening with. p4ddy0d00rs opens with Silver Secret Cave. I like that. Troth opens with Secret Cave Walled Village. I like that a lot less. I would not be opening with a Walled Village. I mean, opening with a village is almost always really dubious, because the main value of a village in your deck is it's helping you resolve collision between terminal action cards. Right? You have a card like Catacombs that requires doesn't give you action back. Right? To play that card, you need to spend an action. So if I had 2 Catacombs on my deck, I could add a Walled Village to allow me to play both of those Catacombs. At the moment, Troth has 0 terminal action cards in their deck, and so the Walled Village is doing absolutely nothing for them. Not absolutely nothing. I guess it's still technically 1 unique card that can help activate Magic Lamp, but I would definitely prefer to add a card that was, actually doing something for my deck to increase its value. So I was saying a second ago, I think the main priority here is going to be to try to get 6 unique cards in play. How can you do that? Well, for one, I'd be trying to look to buy a different card every turn. Right? I don't want to get a bunch of silvers, because getting 2 silvers in play not only doesn't help me activate that magic lamp, it can actively hinder it, right? Because I have to have exactly 1 copy of 6 different cards. So I want like 1 silver, 1 secret cave, 1 oasis, 1 guide, etc. Well, it means if you're spending 2 of your draws to get 2 silvers in hand, I would still treat it as functionally the same, because like let's say I have the ability to draw 6 cards. If 2 of those are silvers, that silvers get in the way of cards that I could potentially draw that could be valuable to me. Obviously, you can wait to play the second silver until after Magic Lamp, but I think the harm is done in the silver taking up space in the first place. Anyways, cards that are really good for activating Magic Lamp. Incidentally, Secret Cave is pretty good. Because if it's a duration card, you can put it in play the turn you play it, but you can also use its little effect, discard 3 cards, and it'll stay in play until next turn, and it'll still be in play next turn. And so if you've got a card that's going to be in play 2 turns instead of 1, it's more likely to be around when you need it. So for example, if your Magic Lamp's coming up turn 4, and you see your Secret Cave turn 3, you can discard 3 cards, then Secret Cave will stay in play and give you 3 coins next turn. It's not the coins that you value, it's the fact that Secret Cave is 1 more unique card in play, and that can help activate the lamp. Guide is another one that can be really helpful for that. Right? You can call a guide, and then the guide will be in play for that turn. So let's get caught up. Patio Doors opens Catacombs is the first 5. I think I prefer Hunting Lodge, but Catacombs seems perfectly fine. Certainly with Villa around, Catacombs is not a bad opening. I said I'd talk about Villa. I can do that now. So Villa is helpful here in a few ways. One that was just pointed out in chat is Villa can help you get treasures into play mid-turn. So we said Hunting Lodge is normally really bad about when you're working with treasures because you have 5 treasures in your hand. You have to discard and draw 5 more. One thing you could do with Villa is you could play those treasures, buy a Villa, and then one of Villa's effects is you return back to your action phase. But your treasures are now in play, and so then you could play your Hunting Lodge and draw on, and you've already gotten your treasures out of your hand. So that's one possibility. Another thing that Villa is really good at is when Villa's around, I think you really want to load up your deck with terminal draw cards. In this case, that'd be Catacombs, right? Catacombs is a terminal action card, and it draws you a bunch of cards. Normally, the big drawback to cards like Catacombs, Smithy, etc., is if you just play them on their own, you draw a bunch of action cards dead, you can't use them. So you got to get villages to be able to use them productively. Villa kind of resolves that problem because you can just buy the village whenever you need it. You don't need to buy the village in advance to set up for it. Let's say you got Catacombs in hand, you play it, and you draw your other cards dead, your Oasis or your Cartographer or whatever. You can then buy a Villa, return to your action phase, play the rest of those cards. And so with Villa around, you kind of just load up on tons of draw, and then whenever you happen to need an action, because you ran into 2 draw cards at once, you just buy the Villa, then and there, you get the effect immediately. So Villa can make opening Catacombs a lot more viable than otherwise might be. Let's see. So Patio Doors got a Crypt after that. I don't like 2 crypts. I think it's too early to get 2 crypts. You just want to get 1 crypt and set aside all those coppers. I think it can often be awkward to get 2 crypts before you've got your first one in play, because if they both end up in the same hand, they're kind of getting in each other's way. 1 more crypt in your hand is 1 less copper or treasure that could be set aside by the first crypt. And if you have 2 crypts in play, those can't count towards the unique cards you have for Magic Lamp activation. So I'd only want 1 crypt, at least until my lamp was popped. The Hunting Lodge seems solid. Who got that? Gains a Hunting Lodge. All right, Troth got the Hunting Lodge. All right, so turn 9 or so, we should be looking at Magic Lamp activation by now. Why haven't we seen that yet? This is a pretty good turn for Patio Doors. They're going to get to set aside 4 cards with Crypt. Okay, so Wandering Winder says, when you play a guide, it's not in play that turn. That's true. So let's say I had a guide in hand and a Magic Lamp in hand. If I play the guide leaves play immediately because it goes straight to the mat. And so I can't count that guide towards Magic Lamp activation because it won't stay in play. So the benefit of guide is you put it in play 1 turn and then you can call it when you need it. And the turn you call it, it will stay in play. And that's how you would activate the lamp with guide. I think Villa, Catacombs, Hunting Lodge, some combination of those cards should make activating Magic Lamp pretty easy here. In fact, Troth20 looks potentially very well set up for this. They've got a Secret Cave already in play, and they've got 4 unique cards in hand: a Walled Village, a Hunting Lodge, Copper, and a Magic Lamp. Now, it will depend a little bit on what they draw here, but they could very potentially activate their lamp here. Patio Doors is looking like they're going to activate their lamp as well. They've got a Mastermind and a Crypt already in play, and they've got 3 unique cards in hand: Villa, Secret Cave, Magic Lamp. And they've got a Silver and Copper on their Crypt mat, so they're guaranteed to activate here. All right, Troth can activate their lamp. So what they should do here is play 1 copper, then play the Magic Lamp, then play the rest of their coppers. Because if they do that, you have 4 cards plus the copper plus the Magic Lamp. That's 6 cards. Good, they did that in the right order. I see some people they press play all treasures, then all the coppers go into play. Well, if you put all the coppers into play before your Magic Lamp, that doesn't count as a unique card. If you put none of the coppers in play before your Magic Lamp, that also doesn't count as a unique card. And so the correct play with treasures is you want to put 1 copper in play first, then the lamp, then the rest of the treasures. Same with other treasures, right? If you had multiples of silver or gold, you do the same thing. All right. Patio Doors should definitely not discard for Secret Cave, I think. You want to keep all those cards around so you can activate Magic Lamp. Oh, they're going for it. The only card I really wanted to discard there is the Estate. I don't see any good reason to set us up, because the other Crypt is going to get played after your Magic Lamp, and no, that's not going to get in your way this turn because it gets played in the night phase. I'd be perfectly fine keeping that around to set aside the silver. What are they buying here? Options. 2 Oases. Interesting. That doesn't seem optimal to me. I mean, Oasis isn't bad with Hunting Lodge. It's not terrible. I would think something like a Mastermind or a Catacombs. Now, one thing that you do know is Patio Doors is you just triggered your Magic Lamp. So you got 3 cards that are coming up in your deck that you can wish for whatever. And so if I were considering getting, some combination of, let's say, draw cards like Catacombs and payload cards like Golds, I would want to buy the draw card with my buy, and then take the Golds with the wish, if I was choosing between those two. Because I can wish for the gold at any point in my turn. But if I happen to draw the gold, at the start of the turn, my turn doesn't kick off. And so I'd rather the card that gives me less flexibility, the one I have to buy early on, be the draw card that can kick off my turn. And then if I do draw through my deck and then find the wishes, I can wish for the golds afterwards. But if I'm in a situation where, let's say I draw just like the wishes in hand, I could then wish for the draw cards and still be fine. I think Patio Doors has a slight lead already. They've got a Mastermind. They both have 1 Catacombs. Patio Doors is also player 1, which could explain it. It might just be player 1 advantage. I'm not sure I would consider having 2 provinces already to be particularly a lead. That seems very early. I mean, maybe their deck's still going to be sustainable, but it doesn't feel like the point in the game where you should have already had 2 provinces. Patio Doors also has 2 crypts, a few more oases. Troth has that walled village. The splitting the difference between the Hunting Lodge and Catacomb strategy seems a little awkward to me. I think I'd rather be drawing with Catacombs. I think, Hunting Lodge, we said, does have a little bit more synergy than usual with treasures because of Villa, but you still don't want a million villas in your deck if you don't need them. You can play Oasis with it, but those are all kind of glorified coppers. They're scoring you 1 coin. I think a much better method of drawing here is just lots of Catacombs and some Masterminds, and then use villas where you need to for the actions. I think that will escalate your deck much faster than Hunting Lodge and a lot of 3 and 4 cost coppers. This is an awkward hand for p4ddy0d00rs. They get to play their Villa thrice, but to very little effect. Alright, now they're getting Catacombs. I like that. Squire Theka's got a nice idea. Guide would have resolved that problem. p4ddy0d00rs does not have a guide down. Do they even have the guide? Gains a guide. Now, Troth has the guide. But, Mastermind is a little bit constrained by the fact that it plays the first card you play, essentially, 3 times. And so your choice of which cards to Mastermind is kind of limited by what cards are in your 5-card starting hand. Well, Guide gives you flexibility, and you don't like your 5-card starting hand, you just pitch it and draw a new one. And so Guide can help line up that Mastermind more reliably. I think, Catacombs would be an excellent Mastermind target. So you could just get some guides and pitch your hand till you found Catacombs to draw with. I think 1 Hunting Lodge is a good number for this deck. It's helpful early on for activating Magic Lamp, and it lets you do some tricks with Villa where you buy things mid-turn, then call Hunting Lodge to redraw. But I don't like having a lot of Hunting Lodges here. There's cheaper villages. Villa seems like a much better village. I like to be spending my main $5 buys on a crypt or 2 and a lot of Catacombs and Masterminds. Definitely, if you're planning on continuing to build, you shouldn't have been buying provinces yet. Whether you're trying to green early or build, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to buy the provinces before building. You should start going green and buying the provinces once your deck's set up for that. And if that means building towards single province, then you start greening when you hit 1 province. If that means building towards double province, you wait till you hit 2. But it doesn't make much sense to get the green cards early and then start building again, because the green cards are actively hindering your deck, right? Not only is province a jump card in your deck that you have to draw through, you're spinning 8, so you're passing up on productive buys that could have got you built sooner. And so you kind of got to be a little bit more conscious about, when is my deck capable of starting to green? You don't just buy a province because you can. You got to ask yourself, is this the point where I want to start committing towards buying provinces? And if it's not yet, you should probably continue building until you reach that point. It is kind of awkward that p4ddy0d00rs' crypts are very symmetrical. I think one only has 1 more copper than another. So they're both going to be coming out of play at relatively the same time. It kind of feels like they were waffling between the Oasis Villa Hunting Lodge strategy where you play a bunch of... Yeah, it's not exactly the same time. That would be a much bigger deal. Part of the reason I think you don't get 2 crypts before you've got the first one in play is because putting them in play at the same time is real awkward. You can also create problems if you put, let's say, 4 coppers in play 1 turn, then 3 coppers in play with the next crypt the next turn. And if they're coming off the mat at the same time, you get that problem of they end up colliding with each other in the same hand. Now, if you're reliably drawing your deck, one coming off 1 turn sooner is totally fine because you can get that one down and then get that one down next turn. I'm not sure if he's reliably drawing his deck. It doesn't look like he quite is. And so it's very much possible that if they're coming out in consecutive turns, they can still be bumping into each other. Yeah, I'm not sure why they pitched that hand. p4ddy0d00rs' deck is looking like it's doing a lot, but I think some of this is just spinning its wheels. They're pitching 5 cards to draw 5 new cards, and it's looking like they're doing a lot with it, but that's not necessarily very helpful. And I think that's gonna be the problem with Hunting Lodge. Hunting Lodge draw works well when you have real good mid-turn payload. Like if you had, I don't know, Covens and I was going to say Livery, but Livery is already a draw. Action cards that generate you lots of coins. Festival, Coven, Treasurer, etc. then you can play those with Hunting Lodge. Or you got cards that gain you stuff mid-turn, like Grave Robber, Displace, etc. Those could be good with Hunting Lodge. But I wouldn't want to add cards like Villa and Oasis to my deck, which are not very good main payload, just to build a deck around Hunting Lodge. If I had other good draw available, I think Catacombs and Gold is probably stronger here. Just because the payload that's available here is just not amazing for Hunting Lodge. You could use Secret Cave, I guess. Discard 3 cards with Secret Cave, then redraw with Hunting Lodge. That's still... You're buying 2 Secret Caves to get 1 effect of a gold. It's also kind of awkward doing both, because if you draw a bunch of cards first with your Catacombs, your Hunting Lodge has to pitch even more cards for that to work. So Troth had 2 provinces a while back. Let's see, when did they get their second one? They got, oh my goodness, they got their first province turn 4? I didn't even notice that. Oh, I just like that a lot. Turn 4 is not a province turn. In almost no scenario is turn 4 ever a province turn. If you hit 8 and it's that early in the game, you just buy whatever the best card for your deck is, because you have carte blanche to buy any action card. You could conceivably even buy 2 cards there as Troth. You could buy a Villa and then buy a 5-cost card, because Villa goes back to your hand and gives you another plus buy. So you could have gotten the Villa essentially for free. You have 8, you spend 4 on Villa, you get it in hand, you play it, you get another buy and another coin, then you can buy a $5 card because you're back to 5. But the province, I don't know, very much just like that. It's not helping you activate Lamp, it's not helping you build your deck. That's super early. And they got their second province turn 10. Again, pretty early. And we're seeing, they're already up 2 provinces, but we're now turn 16. They're still only up 2 provinces. A deck that greens early is not going to green sustainably. I think this hand answers Searing Spear's question. I don't think Troth's deck post turn 10 was in a position to sustainably buy provinces faster than an engine that could build up. I think p4ddy0d00rs is underplaying this a little bit with the Hunting Lodge shenanigans, triggering some bad shuffles here. But I would very much prefer to play from Hunting Lodge, from p4ddy0d00rs' position, circa turn 10 or so. I don't like the early greening. I mean, turn 10 maybe could be a good position in the abstract to buy your first province or so. But I don't think Troth is in that position. Yeah, turn 4 is definitely not the turn for province. So this is another problem that these Hunting Lodges are going to create for you, is if you're pitching all your bad cards every turn, what's going to happen is you draw a hand of 3 coppers and a state. You discard it with your Hunting Lodge. You draw some more coppers and a state. You discard it with your Hunting Lodge, and you're cycling through to find all your villas and oases, etc. Now your discard pile is building up with progressively larger stack of really bad cards, of lots of estates, lots of coppers are all down there. And then if you draw through your deck and then start to redraw a little bit past the end of your deck into your discard, you flip over your deck and create a new deck that's what? Just all those junk cards you discarded. All your good actions are in play. All the coppers and estates are down in the discard. You've now got a deck that's just those bad cards. Now, if you have enough draw to draw all the way back through that discard, not necessarily a problem. But that's often not the case. And so what can happen is you draw 1 or 2 cards into the discard pile. You flipped over a deck that's got 8 or 9 junk cards in it. You drew 1 or 2 of them. Well, what's coming up next hand? The other 5 or 6 junk cards. And so you create this really awkward problem for yourself where you often see hands like p4ddy0d00rs' last hand. And I don't think that's just bad luck. I think a lot of this is, kind of p4ddy0d00rs' own doing, playing a little hastily with the Hunting Lodge discards and then drawing a little too far. Now, one way to resolve that would be to just get some guides, right? You get that bad hand, you just discard it with guides. I think the better solution is just not to be playing this Hunting Lodge-focused deck in the first place. I very much like building more here. I think the amount that p4ddy0d00rs is building is more or less the correct amount to build, but the way they're building I don't like very much. I don't like the mass Hunting Lodge strategy. I mean, their deck does look real fancy. You know, the thing where you just draw with Catacombs and play golds is simpler looking. But in this case, I think it's also just the better deck. You know, the draw to X decks, they're not good at activating Crypt. Like, you can't play the Crypt mid-turn. So if you want to play it, you can't play your Hunting Lodge. They don't work well with all the treasures that you can't trash. Catacombs, I think, has a much better time dealing with all that. It doesn't create discard piles full of junk. It makes it easier to get all the coppers on your Crypt mat. Is Crypt a mat? I don't know what the term is. It's not really mat. Get the cards under your Crypt. So is Troth winning? They're up a lot of points. And, you know, p4ddy0d00rs' deck is doing a lot, but a lot of that is, I think, unproductive. I think Troth might be in the lead here. Yeah. I mean, there's still plenty of room to get fancy with the Catacomb stuff. You can have, like, a Hunting Lodge to do some, like, mid-turn gain villa tricks. You can have some Mastermind guides and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I want a lot of Catacombs, some villas, and some golds, I think. Now, the way you do the villa tricks that I was alluding to there is, like, let's say you have, you know, a Hunting Lodge or something, and you're mostly drawing with a bunch of Catacombs. Then you draw through your deck, and let's say you get like 15, 20 treasure in play. Then you buy a bunch of useful cards. Let's say some more gold, some more Masterminds, whatever. Then your last buy that turn, you buy the villa. You now return to your action phase with just like a Hunting Lodge in hand. You can play that Hunting Lodge and draw 5 new cards, and then draw the cards you just bought and get them into play the same turn. So you could buy a Mastermind, get it into play the same turn, set up for next turn. You could buy a gold and immediately get 3 coins from it. So the gold's only it's already paying for itself the turn you buy it, stuff like that. And so I could see, you know, a Hunting Lodge around could be helpful for activating Lamp early on, could be helpful for doing tricks like that. But for the most part, I think, you know, Catacombs is the best draw here. All right, p4ddy0d00rs finally added a guide. That's good. Definitely their deck needs the guide because they're creating some bad shuffles for themselves. The guide can resolve. I'm not sure the Cartographer is as important. I don't think the Cartographer has a whole lot of value here. Cartographer is nice when there's cards that care about what's coming up in your deck, like Patrician or Herald or Will-O-Wisp or Mystic or Wishing Well, where you're trying to like guess the top card of your deck or otherwise line up cards to hit the right card. And, you know, Cartographer lets you see those cards. I think that's kind of the ideal scenario for Cartographer. But the marginal benefit it has in reliability of just like letting you see cards and discard cards, I think is usually outweighed by just getting another power card that also costs 5. Like, in this kingdom, if I'm trying to avoid duds, I think the guide is honestly doing a lot more for me, cycling through my deck, avoiding duds, than the Cartographer is, despite costing less. Yeah, the Cartographer could... If Villa weren't around, I could see an argument for Cartographer in the early game to help activate Magic Lamp. But I think Hunting Lodge or Catacombs plus Villa is already going to be doing the thing that Cartographer does, but better. But that could be an example where you might want Cartographer just for cycling through your cards real fast. Okay, p4ddy0d00rs, I think probably just needs to double province here. You know, Troth is already up 2 provinces. I think you take 2 provinces and a Catacombs, maybe? Two provinces and a secret cave. I don't like the secret cave. This game is probably not going on 2 more turns. Secret cave does not help you next turn. You play it next turn, you discard 3 cards next turn, which is actively a little bit bad, and then Secret Cave helps you 2 turns from now. If this game goes on 2 more turns, you're already kind of in a bad spot, I think. And so if I'm Patio Doors, I'm adding something that's going to help me the very next turn. It could just be 2 provinces and a duchy. That's Wandering Winter's suggestion. You kind of recognize you're going to need some extra points, because if your opponent province is here, they'll be up to 33 points, and you have to take a few duchies next turn anyway. So you could just get started on the duchies that you know you'll inevitably need to buy. That is, I think, a totally reasonable buy there. That said, Troth's deck is starting to slow down. I'd pitch this hand. If I'm Troth, I'm really looking to get 1 more province in. I think that puts Patio Doors in a much more awkward situation. Yeah. So now Troth, I think, is very much in it. If they failed the province, I think Patio Doors could quite easily do 2 provinces and an estate to win. Now Patio Doors needs to beat 33 points. So they can take 1 more province, which will bring them to 21. They need to score 12 more. So they need to do province, quad duchy, estate. I don't think their deck's quite that strong. That's 30 coins. They were hitting 21 last turn. I don't know how many guides I don't know how many secret caves they had last turn compared to this one. But I don't think they're going to be able to hit 30. I'm not even sure they have the buys for it if they do. Because that's 6 buys. They only have at most 3 villas. Yeah. So Patio Doors now has to hope that Troth duds at least 1 more turn. Yeah, so I think this is looking like it's Troth's game most likely. They even got a mastermind down for next turn. I'm going to say the key takeaway is, first you got to be careful with those shuffles, right? The Hunting Lodge thing is very prone to trigger bad shuffles. A lot of draw to X decks are. And if you're not careful with that, you get a few dud turns. That sets you an entire turn or 2 behind. Guide could potentially resolve that. Being more careful about triggering shuffles could resolve that. Secondly, I think the problem with the Hunting Lodge deck is it's real slow to get going, right? So you have to add like a Hunting Lodge for draw, and then you're adding payload like 1 coin at a time, right? 4 coins to add a villa, which is like a copper. 3 coins to add an oasis. That's not getting money into your deck very fast. You're spending a lot of buys and a lot of coins to get a small amount of payload. One of the virtues of the Catacombs thing is it gets the money into your deck faster, right? Gold is 1 buy, 6 coins, and you're adding 3 coins to your deck. And so the Hunting Lodge thing has a lot more moving parts you have to add for not a whole lot of benefit. It's not more reliable or anything. Yeah, Secret Cave is not a card I ever really build an engine around, like, as the main payload, that's for sure. It's nice for helping activate Lamp, and it can be nice in a few other specific contexts. But it's kind of awkward as a main payload. Because to get the effect of the gold, you have to have 2 of them anyway, right? Because one of them gets you the gold 1 turn, then it stays out of play. You'll need a second one the other turn. So you're spending 6 and 2 buys to get 3 coins, which is already not necessarily better. It does have the virtue of working with Hunting Lodge. If Hunting Lodge were the only draw, I could see building something like Patio Doors' deck. But with Catacombs around, I'd rather just build that. Haunted Woods is a good scenario. So Haunted Woods is a draw card that it has this attack, which is whenever you buy a card, if your opponent has Haunted Woods in play, you have to put all the stuff that's still in your hand back on your deck, which is usually mostly your victory cards, right? You've probably played your actions, you probably put your treasures into play to buy things, but the estates and provinces stick around. And so Haunted Woods can get really nasty once you've got some green cards in your deck, because you have to top deck a handful of estates and provinces, which makes you really likely to dud the next turn. And so a card like Secret Cave that discards cards could be valuable in a game with Haunted Woods around, because you really want to discard those estates and provinces and get them out of your hand, so that the Haunted Woods attack doesn't force you to top deck them. And so that could be an example of where that card could be good. I don't think this would be crazy. In this kingdom, I think Troth is winning. But you should not, in general, have the mindset of, I've been up in points the whole time, I'm going to win. I would say it is a very, 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 very common trope, if you're watching 2 players play, is one player over-eagerly greens, turn 4, say, and then they have the lead the whole game because they greened too early, but then their deck stalls out well before they can empty 8 provinces while their opponent keeps building, and then they take the lead in the final turn or 2. In fact, I would guess that if I'm playing lower rated players, I'm probably in the lead early to mid game like 10 to 15% of the time, maybe. Usually it's the newer players that green sooner, and then the engine ends up outbuilding them and winning in the final turns. So I would not assume that because you've been in the lead points-wise, you were actually in the lead. If your deck quality was lower, you have to anticipate your opponent scoring a lot more points down the road. Now in this kingdom, I think, p4ddy0d00rs, I think, underplayed their engine, and it might not be able to outscore. But in general, it would not surprise me at all to see the engine player win despite being 18 points down. And I think, good engine in this kingdom could easily, in the final turn, overcome a 15 to 33 deficit. But it would require having, a few more villas, a few more golds. Are you saying given p4ddy0d00rs' deck? Or in this... I disagree. I think this kingdom, you could very easily hit that much. Yeah, no. If my opponent is greening early and letting me have full access to like the large majority of the villas in the catacombs, I think, I think you'd easily get up that much. I mean, even p4ddy0d00rs' deck is hitting like in the mid-20s. We're only talking about like 30 here. I think that'd be quite doable. The other deck... Well, yeah, if the other deck is different, you probably also need to green sooner. I would agree with that. In a scenario where I'm playing versus a troth style play, where they green very early and are hoping that I can't outbuild that, I definitely think you could just build gratuitously and hit a large amount. If I think they're both playing optimally, you green much sooner and don't plan to score 18 points in the last turn, because chances are villas are running sooner, they're contesting catacombs, etc. But in a scenario where my opponent just does not build, and I get to, I think you could easily score that many points. All right, does Troth have it? Looks like it. All right, this is a game. Important to play that mastermind for next turn. All right, 1-0 for Troth, and they won as player 2. So a bit of a break point there. Yeah, I assume the deck they're describing is more or less the same, just greening sooner and building less. I think I would definitely build a double province in that kingdom. I mean, I wouldn't be looking to score 18 points in the last turn, certainly. That's not the scenario you want to be in. But I think you could easily get to double province there before greening. What do we have here? Okay, so draw. We got Diplomat, which is draw. Diplomat's always +2 cards. And if you have 4 or fewer cards in hand when you play it, then it also gives you +2 action. So it's like a little lost city, but it's kind of like Hunting Lodge in that it works well with cards that reduce your hand size mid-turn. So, for example, Diplomat and Courtier can work very well together, because Courtier can score you 3 coins mid-turn, and then you can play Diplomat to redraw. Diplomat and Grave Robber could potentially work. You can play Grave Robber mid-turn to gain stuff, and then redraw with Diplomat, etc. So if I'm looking for Diplomat, I'm looking for stuff like Grave Robber Courtier as the payload, rather than like Relic and Gold. So that's one option. Another option for drawing here is Ranger. Ranger is kind of like halfway between like a Moat and a Smithy in its draw. Every 2 plays of Ranger, you're getting 5 cards. So it's like 2.5 cards. So it nets you like 1.5 card draw on average per play, which is halfway between the amount that a Moat and a Smithy will do for you. It does come with +buy though. So Ranger is not a bad draw here either. Lastly, Masquerade. Masquerade is a great card in general, largely because it helps you trash in the early game. But it can also function as a draw card because it is +2 cards. So we've got plenty of draw here. Do we have action? Hostelry is a village. Once you've got it in your deck, it's literally just a village, but it has a nice little on-gain effect, which is if you have extra treasures lying around, you can discard them to gain horses, which is like a one-shot laboratory. And we said Diplomat can also function as a village if you're playing it when you have 4 or fewer cards in hand. Other relevant stuff, trashing, we've got Masquerade, which can trash, and Scrap, which can trash. Transmute can trash too, but we don't talk about Transmute because Transmute's really weak. I guess I can talk about why Transmute's weak. You have to get a potion, which is the junk card on its own, to get the Transmute. Then B, you have to get the Transmute. So you're already 2 shuffles in and have 2 more junk in your deck before you even start trashing. And then, when Transmute trashes a card, it just gives you another card to replace it. Like a Duchy, a Gold, or a Transmute, which are all also stop cards. So Transmute is a really, really, really weak trasher. Baker's alright payload. Baker's, it's really nice and reliable, right? It's cantrip, never hurt your deck, gives you free coffers. The weakness of Baker is just you're paying 5 to add 1 more coin to your deck. And so it can be a little slow to get going. And we've got Relic here, which is, it's like a silver, but it also is like an attack. It's like -1 card token. It doesn't stack because it's only 1 card token. You can't like play 5 relics and give your opponent -5 draw. But often getting 1 relic is good because it's like stealing a laboratory from your opponent. They have to get 1 more draw into the deck than they otherwise could. The events, we got Banquet, which is probably unlikely to be valuable here. Taking 2 coppers is just a big deficit to hit 5. We got Tower, which kind of favors engines because you empty some like action piles and you get 1 coin or 1 point per card in that pile. So what are we doing here? I could see 2 different viable decks. I think you could build a more traditional draw deck that uses Hostelry as the village and plays like Masquerades early and then Rangers later for the draw, and the payload is like a relic and some golds. I think you could also build a deck around Diplomat that has payload as Courtier and Grave Robber. I think I like the latter one better. Now, how are we opening? An important thing to note in the opening is because Baker's around, you start with an extra coffer, which is like a coin that you can steal whenever. So you could open like 3-4, or you could open 4-4 or 3-5 if you use your coffer one of those turns. I'm definitely opening Masquerade, no question there. Masquerade is an excellent trasher. It's a very strong 3-cost card. Now, what are you opening with it? You could go double Masquerade. That can be awkward because they can collide with each other. You could get Masquerade and Scrap. Scrap's a slightly weaker trasher in the abstract, but if you collide the Masquerade and the Scrap, you could play the Scrap to trash an estate and get an action, which would allow you to play both of them in the same turn. You could consider opening Masquerade in a 5-cost, like Masquerade Baker, Masquerade Relic, would not be bad. Masquerade Silver is also just a perfectly fine opening for hitting 5 in the future. What do they do? Masquerade Baker, that seems fine to me. Masquerade Relic, I like that better, I think. There is some risk that you draw the Baker dead with Masquerade, which is not nothing. Relic's attack is pretty strong. And we said, Baker's nice and reliable, but it's also a little bit slow to get going. Let me catch up with what people in the chat have said. DZ hates the Baker opening. I don't hate the Baker opening. I think it's fine. I don't think it's optimal, but I don't think it's like a big misplay or anything. I don't see what the problem is with Masquerade Relic. It would be funny to just like spam Banquets and then try to empty all 46 coppers for the tower points. I feel like the engine here is strong enough that would win. You could empty coppers 3 at a time with Banquet for 3 coins by gaining a new copper, but that's still like what, 16 buys? And your deck is full of coppers? Alright, how has this progressed since then? So Troth is getting silver. That signals to me that Troth is not trying to build the Courtier, Grave Robber, Diplomat thing, because that deck would not really want treasures in it. But then Troth got a Diplomat anyway. I'm a little confused. P also got a silver and also a Courtier. And Troth got a Courtier. And I'm not sure what they're aiming towards. I think if I want the Courtier and or Grave Robber as payload and Diplomat as draw, I don't really want treasures in my deck. In fact, the Relic attack isn't even necessarily going to hurt very much because you're fine playing with 4 cards at the start because that helps you activate the Diplomat effect more reliably. And so I still think something around Courtier, Grave Robber, Diplomat is my ideal strategy. And that would not involve having silvers and relics and stuff, because those are just, getting in the way. The way Diplomat works is you want to keep your hand size down to 4. So you play Diplomat to draw stuff, then you play your payload mid-turn, like Courtier or Grave Robber. Well, if you got silvers, you can't play those until the buy phase, so they're just stuck in your hand, and they're preventing you from getting back down to 4 cards to activate your next Diplomat. I think the Grave Robber Courtier Diplomat thing is definitely a lot more delicate and difficult to play. I think, Hostelry Ranger Draw Engine is also totally fine. You could add a Courtier to that, I guess, to get your golds in there. That's not a bad idea. So maybe that's what they're aiming for. Maybe their thought process is they eventually want to draw with like Ranger and Hostelry and Masquerade, but they want to get their golds via Courtier. Now, Courtier does require you to have a card with multiple types. It's not very good if you're just revealing a card with one type. That's just like a terminal gold gainer. That's gross. So if Courtier's in the kingdom, one thing to check is what cards can activate it. There's 2 2-type cards here. Diplomat is an action-reaction, and Relic is a treasure attack. So Courtier, you'd want to have that in hand with either the Diplomat or the Relic, because then you could get 2 of these effects instead of 1, making it much stronger. So if I'm playing the standard draw deck with Hostelry, Ranger, Masquerade, I probably want a Relic and a Courtier, and I'll use my Relic to activate my Courtier. If I'm playing the Diplomat Courtier strategy, don't really need the Relic because I'll have Diplomats around all the time. Hostelry occasionally has some real nice plays in the opening where you can gain tons of horses for productive benefit. Often I think it can just be a village. Here I think it's mostly going to be a $4 village. I don't think that makes it bad, but it's occasionally really strong when you have some nice interactions with the horse, and usually basically a village. Yeah, why did Troth not trash? They played their Masquerade and then elected not to trash. I mean, no version of deck that you're building here, I think, wants to have coppers and estates around. Alright, I think I'm all caught up now. Troth going with their standard MO of greening early. I don't like that. I think turn 8 is much earlier than I'd want to green here. I think there's at least 2 different engines that could be built here. Both of them seem stronger than early greening. What does Patio Doors' deck look like? Patty's got the Ranger. They've got a Masquerade. They've got some villages. So they're building, I think, towards the more standard draw engine. That's fine. Ranger's a card I think you often want in 2s. Ideally, the way you set up Ranger is you really want to get that token face down going into the start of your next turn. Because the way Ranger works is the first time you play it of the game, it puts the token face down. Then the second time it draws 5 cards. But that's not the way you want it to work out in your turn. Because if you have to play 2 Rangers before you even draw any cards, it's going to be hard to line up. You have to have 2 villages and 2 Rangers in your starting hand. That's not very likely. And so usually what you do is you get the Ranger face down, and then on future turns, you want to have an even number of Rangers, and you play the first one to draw 5 cards. Then your turn kicks off. You draw around to the second Ranger, and you can play that one to set the token back down. And then now you've got a nice setup for the next turn again. And so I want 2 Rangers or 4 Rangers or 6 Rangers to make sure my first Ranger draws 5 cards to make my turn much more likely to get rolling in the first place. And then you can reset the token later. I think with Diplomat, Relic could be actively friendly. Because you could play your Diplomat from a 5-card hand and still activate it. That'd be the ideal scenario. Diplomat can dud if you have Diplomat and 4 other cards. Because if you play Diplomat from a 5-card hand, you draw up to 6, and then the effect doesn't activate. But if I had Diplomat in a 5-card hand, and my opponent has played a Relic, depending on when it was played, either it gave me a 4-card hand in the first place, in which case my Diplomat definitely activates, or if I have a 5-card hand and the card token's still down, I can play the Diplomat, and it only draws me 1 card instead of 2, so my hand is still at 5 cards, and then the effect activates and I get the actions. And so, I think Relic is plausibly very friendly for the Diplomat deck, because often one of the harder parts for that deck can be getting that early activation to set the turn off. I'm not sure it helps more than it hurts. But it's definitely not hurting a lot at the very least. It's probably helping as often as it's hurting. I think I would have wanted at least 2 Trashers here. 2 Masquerades or a Masquerade and a Scrap. These decks are not looking very thin to me. And we're pretty well into the mid-game now. I think with the decks they're building, 2 Masquerades is totally fine. They need the draw anyway. Masquerade's an okay draw card. I also don't dislike the Scrap. You know, scrapping estates can be pretty good. Tower, I think I talked about this briefly, but Tower is another thing that inclines me very much against Troth's strategy of greening early. Because an engine that builds a big deck and then wins the majority of the key cards, like Hostelry or Ranger or whatever, can also be scoring a few extra points that way, which is just like one little extra edge in the engine's favor. They can be looking to like pile out some action cards and get 10 extra points like that. And these decks, 2 Masquerades definitely seems good. I think the Diplomat deck could very much value the Scrap over a second Masquerade, because Scrap is another card that can help you activate that Diplomat. You can like trash a card and take the plus action, but not the plus card from Scrap. So you have a hand like Scrap, Silver, Diplomat, and some junk. You could scrap the silver, take like plus action, plus coin, plus buy or something. And then now you have a 4-card hand, you can play Diplomat and start drawing. That could be a scenario where Scrap is valuable. Probably in these decks, I would think Masquerade's better because they just want the standard draw. Masquerade's also just generally a better card if I had to pick between the 2. Who is ahead here? I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're probably... It seems like we're going to consistently see the early green strategy from Troth versus the build big strategy versus Patty. Both of these kingdoms are ones where I like the idea that Patty's gone for more. But it definitely requires, more execution to do well. I mean, we saw that fall a little bit flat last time, I think. Patty's already hitting 12. That's a big number. I would undo that, I think. Keep a few coppers around and buy another hostelry and take some horses. I'm not sure exactly how many. Maybe you're buying a second... Do they have 2 rangers already? The ranger. They already got 2. Could be hostelry ranger, gain 4 horses. Hostelry masquerade, gain 5 horses. They have plenty of plus buy. I don't think they need more plus buy. They only saw 2 of it this turn, but they've got a courtier in there. They've got 2 rangers in there. Hostelry Mask sounds good, yeah. I mean, Hostelry and Mask lets you get 5 horses, which is a hell of a lot. Patio Doors is probably looking at Hostelry Ranger, which also seems totally fine to me. Ranger does draw a little bit more than Masquerade in the long term. Yeah, I think Hostelry Ranger is very plausibly a good buy there. Yeah, that's a good argument for Masquerade. They're still not very thin. Turn 11 with Masquerade around, you could definitely be thinner than this. All right, so Troth, here's a scenario where Troth would really love to get attacked with a relic. Which one has the relic? Is that Patty? I think it's Patty. Yeah. So incidentally, Patty's relic could really save Troth here. Because if they get that card token down, Troth can play the Diplomat first, get +2 actions, then play the Masquerade, and kick their turn off. Yeah, I like Tower. I don't think... Like, you don't aim towards Tower points as your main victory points, but it's a nice little extra oomph. Especially if Troth is playing with a few of the cards you want anyway. They're getting a few Masquerades, a few Diplomats, and so they're helping you lower those piles. So you win those key splits, 6-4 or 7-3. That's just like a few extra victory points in every pile. I would be building a good bit more than Troth is. So fortunately for Patty, he failed to find his relic, and so Troth is now going to have a bit more of a dud turn. Actually, I mean, kind of fortunate, kind of unfortunate. You know, it does kill Troth's turn, but also they don't have a good target for their courtier reveal. Does Patty have a dead turn? Oh, they do have all their villages in hand, don't they? That is kind of awkward. They have the ranger down there. But the horses could draw them through the deck. So with 2 horses, they can draw at least into the discard. And so there's some chance. Oh, this is an awkward hand. I think as Patty, you're probably scrapping the silver to have a chance of a good turn. Like scrap silver for card action coin or something. And then if you can draw your horse, which maybe draws the other horse, which then draws... Or scrapping a state here is now probably better. Because what you really want from it is card and actions. You don't need to scrap silver anymore. Troth does have a lot of coin tokens built up. Scrap relic. Patty still needs the relic, I think. It's their best target for a courtier. And, I mean, the real thing you need to kick your turn off here is mostly card action. I think I would scrap a state. You could scrap silver with the idea of passing the estate with your masquerade if your turn kicks off. But that's a little bit greedy, I think. I think I'd just scrap the estate. Card action, I think. Oh, this is a sad draw. Okay, so Patty's turn never comes to be. Are those 2 horses on the very bottom? I think they bottomed 2 of the horses. That's kind of unfortunate. And now their next turn is all the cards. Yeah, so if they drawn that in a slightly different order, they didn't take action. How do I see what they take? Oh yeah, they took Ranger horse. Okay, so yeah, I don't understand why they did that. That doesn't make sense to me. You should have taken card action there for sure. You can see here, Patty trashed the estate, and they drew Ranger, so they took plus card, and they gained a horse, so they took plus horse. Certainly the option there, I think, was plus card plus action. Because there was like a 2/3 chance there with Ranger and 2 horses on the bottom that you drew the horse, and then your turn could potentially kick off. I'm not exactly sure. What do you mean by buy? You seem very emphatic about buying something. You're taking plus buy off of the scrap? Is that the idea? Oh, you're reacting to Troth taking buy from courtier. I see. Yeah, fair point. Yeah, Troth has this problem, I think, which is inconsistently greening. This deck's definitely a build big deck, but supposing you're choosing between trying to build big and trying to green early, you should decide kind of early on which one of those you want to do, and then once you're committed to greening, you kind of want to consistently green. You don't want to buy a few provinces and then continue building, because if you wanted to build anyway, getting action cards into your deck sooner is good for you. Getting provinces into your deck sooner is bad for you, and so you always want to build however much you want to build before you start greening. And so Troth seems to be like uncertain about how much they want to build. With Troth, once you've committed to provinces, you kind of got to say, I'm not trying to hit double province. I'm just going to province 1 turn consistently. Hope I can get a majority, or province once per turn consistently. And then hope I can get like a majority of the provinces in my deck before Patty kicks off. I don't think that's the best strat here, but it's like an internally consistent strategy. Getting some provinces and then building more is just a bad order no matter what you're aiming towards. If you want to build, you just continue building before touching any provinces. And if you want to go green early, then you just start provincing and don't look back. I agree with the comment that given how Troth has played up to this point, the correct strategy was just to continue provincing and not try to go back to building with more bakers. You just take like coin gold or something with courtier and buy a single province. And they did have a lot of coffers banked up, so they're probably going to hit province every turn from here on out if they play their deck right. Double province, not likely, but single province, very doable. for the remainder of the game. And then that's the timer that p4ddy0d00rs is on. Is can you get your deck in gear before they empty a province per turn? Who has a majority of the bakers? Troth has a bunch. Oh, so is Troth trying to get all the bakers? And Baker stack just seems like a classic trap. If you read the tower's text, it says from an empty supply pile, horse does not count as a supply pile. So Squire's Deck is wondering whether horses give you tower points, and that's why it doesn't. Is because other stuff like horses or mercenaries or teachers or whatever, they will say this is not in the supply in their text, and that's how you know it's not a supply pile. A supply pile would be like any of the kingdom cards or any of the generic cards like Province Gold, etc. Now, Province doesn't count towards tower points for other reasons, which is the victory card. But Province is a supply pile. Emptying horses in this board would be really impressive, given the very finite number of hostelries. Oh no, you do have scraps. You could empty horses with scrap, I guess. I don't think that's the ace strat, but I guess it makes it possible. I very much like Patty's position here. Looks like their deck is well up and running, and they're going to be hitting double province soon. Troth's only got 2 provinces to show for it. I think the Baker stack thing is, you don't have time to do a Baker stack and also single province. If you're trying to empty the action cards, you're doing that by building bigger. And even if the Bakers are a lot of points, like 10 points is a good amount of points, the problem is if you're buying the Bakers instead of buying provinces, you're lengthening the game. And Patty's deck is building faster than yours is. And so if I'm trying to do single province simple deck here, I'm trying to bring the game to a close before that happens. And so as Troth, I wouldn't even bother taking those last 2 Bakers, because 2 more turns, I think. Yeah, it's 10 points, but it's 2 more turns where Patty's scoring 16 points on you. Yeah, probably buy more hostelries, but also just buy more cards in general. A lot more action cards before you buy those provinces. Troth's deck needs more hostelries, more rangers, more masquerades, all of those. Yeah, just more hostelries would not really fix their problem. Lowering copper with Banquet. Do you have enough? How much money would you need to empty coppers with Banquet? That's a whole lot of points. You need to buy Banquet 15 times and buy a copper, right? 15 Banquets is 45 money. And you'd need like 15 buys. Can their deck do that? Conceivably. I don't think that's where I'd be going, but I guess there's a world where you could try to do that. That'd be funny. If I were in a situation where I'd overbuilt and my opponent had already gotten a bunch of the provinces, I guess that's something I'd be thinking about, is maybe I take the copper pile out as an evasive maneuver. Certainly in this scenario, as Patty, I'm just angling for provinces. Oh, did Patty play their last ranger? Oh, they did. So I was saying earlier, ranger is really reliable if you go into the next turn with the token face down, because the first ranger you find draws you 5 cards. Once you've got a 9-card hand, your turn's probably going to kick off. And so having a ranger with a token down is a really good way to make sure your deck works. The problem with Patty is they just played their last ranger, which put their token back in the face up position. So now their first ranger is not going to draw at all. Look, they have 1 ranger in their hand. I also agree. I dislike taking the Bakers a lot. I'm imagining Patty's thought process was something like, these Bakers are going to empty, I better get in on these points before Troth does. And so rather than let Troth take the Baker points 10-0, Patty's thinking, I'll split them 8-2, and then Troth's only up 6 points on me. The problem is, emptying the Bakers saves Troth 2 buys, right? To empty those Bakers, Troth would have to spend like 2 more turns buying Bakers, or at least 1 more turn with a plus buy. And that's slowing Troth down, right? That's turns that they're not buying provinces. And given that Troth built less than Green earlier, and Paddy built more, Paddy wants the game to go out, to go as long as possible. And so emptying those bakers is just like doing work for Troth that they don't have to do so they can turn to provinces sooner. I would much rather make Troth spend 2 more turns buying 2 bakers for 2 more points rather than emptying it for them. Yeah, so Paddy's commenting, I forgot about Tower. I think at that point, you probably just continue to forget about Tower. Let Troth take the bakers, slows them down. They get 10 points, but 2 more turns, your deck can do more than 10 points to come back from that. Is there a third non-supply pile Paddy's going to empty? Yeah, so Paddy can definitely think about emptying Rangers for hella points towards the end. Yeah, Tower. A Baker stack plus Tower is just like the ultimate trap for like mid-40s level players. People love the Baker stack. People love the Tower points. The 10 Baker play is just like the ultimate trap here, I think. So now, why is that bad? Well, Baker's not a bad card. Adding a Baker to your deck is almost never gonna reduce your deck's quality. The problem is Baker's just kind of a slow card. You're spending $5 to get an action card that's kind of about as valuable as a merchant to you most turns, right? Like it's scoring you 1 coin. And so you could be getting a lot more value out of like a Grave Robber or a Courtier. Grave Robber can be getting you provinces per play. Courtier can be getting you golds per play. Scoring a lot more than 1 coin. And so just taking lots of bakers in lieu of building with other cards is just really slow. 1 or 2 bakers can often be good. Having a few coin tokens around can like smooth out your buys. And that can be helpful if you're trying to hit like exact numbers. But mass bakers, the more bakers you get, the less they're coffers, and the more they're basically just coins, because you're having to spend most of your coffers every turn anyway. And so I would not be playing the mass baker stack most of the time. It can be good in Weak Kingdoms. I actually just played a baker stack game recently where I just took all the bakers. But that's because there was no draw, no action to go around. With Kingdoms as good draw and action, I wouldn't be angling for just like mass bakers as the payload if there's something better around. Can Paddy even kick off if they draw a hostelry? Because remember, they also left their token face up. They would need 2 villages to play those Rangers for draw. As it turns out, they very well might have drawn it, because looking at the next hand, that could have worked. Scrapping gold, I guess, is a nice last-ditch effort. They left their token face up again. I dislike this. Again, if you're playing with Rangers, you always want to start the turn with the token face down. It makes your deck much, much more likely to kick off. And so if I'm playing something there, I'm probably just playing my Ranger. You could play the scrap and try to kick off. As it turns out, likely would have worked. You could just set your Ranger token up for next turn, but they did neither of those. And so now they're potentially looking at another dud turn. I think they're still in a fine position. Can Troth pile out the Rangers? Who gets the points from that? Troth would have 3, right? Gains a Ranger. Well, I mean, for next turn, right? You take 2 Rangers now and pray Paddy duds. Is very much a viable strategy for Troth, right? Like, if I'm Troth, I don't think I'm emptying 5 provinces before Paddy gets underway. I think best strat for Troth is probably going for the Ranger pile out. I don't think it's more likely than 50% to win, but I think it's more likely than other things available to Troth to win. Now, I'm not even sure what the Ranger split is going to be here. If Paddy takes the Rangers now, do they win on tower points? Okay, I think Paddy's got it now. With 2 buys, they can take Ranger and some victory points, and that'll be enough. I think Troth's brazen 2 Ranger play was totally fine. I think someone suggested in the chat Province Ranger. That also sounds fine to me. But I think Troth's best hope there was pile out the Rangers and sneak them out under from Paddy and hope they have a dead turn. As it turns out, Paddy did not. But like with this next turn, Paddy was going to be in the lead anyway, so they had to look for a fast win. Yes, I think we saw. I think Troth underbuilt a lot. I think they got sucked in by the allure of the Bakers. I think that was a mistake. And p4ddy, I think, kind of misplayed the Rangers a bit, which caused them to have more dud turns than they could have. Both of them under-trashed as well. I think 2 Masquerades, or maybe even Masquerade Scrap, I think would have been definitely better for trashing. And the last thing I'd say is, I think there was a lot to be said for a Diplomat, Courtier, Grave Robber deck that neither of them really went for. But I think that's probably what I would play. Like, something along the lines of what p4ddy's doing here is definitely a good deck. I think I prefer the Grave Robber Diplomat thing, though. I think that's what I would go for. Wandering Winder prefers the Hostelry Ranger stuff. I mean, it's certainly not a bad deck. You know, the general outline of p4ddy's deck is definitely the other viable strategy here. The Diplomat thing does have the nice advantage of countering Relic rather than being countered by Relic. Alright, so clearly there's a big player 2 advantage because player 1 has not won a game in this series yet. It's 1-1 going to game 3.